Okay, everybody. Um, so today I'm going to be talking about the situation in the UK with regards to the unrest that's going on over there, and has been now for probably about a week or something. There was a time when the media would have um, kind of convinced and persuaded everybody to toe this line of they're all EDL and thugs and idiots and council estate or working class scumbags or whatever, and that would have been seen as the truth. That would have been the accepted narrative, and most people would have gone along with it. And that has been the case, and still is to some extent now. But I think I see a shift now. I see there's a bit more of a kind of open discussion around what's actually really going on underneath the surface. It's easy to see. It's easy to criticize a whole group of people and to demonize a whole group of people. Um, Based on certain stereotypical characteristics, and to demonize everybody that happens to have an England flag or whatever, and label them all as far right thugs or Nazis or whatever, buzzwords or whatever, smearing bullshit that the left like to do and have done for so long. But I think now I think a lot of people are waking up and seeing that, yes, that there are those people do exist. But I think it's more complex now. I think there was a time when it was just a bunch of football lads kind of just being violent for the sake of it. It was more of a rivalry kind of gang culture thing back in the day, whereas now I think there's actually legitimate reasons why people are pissed off. And I think really, in my opinion, the situation that happened with the three girls unfortunately being killed, I think it was last week, I personally think that was a catalyst. And I think a lot of people, especially younger people, they've had a lot of pent up resentment and anger and frustration with the police, especially the government, but also local authorities as well, and just generally, there's just a sense. I think really what's happening has kind of been bubbling underneath the surface for I'd say a good 5 to 10 years, if not longer. Now, clearly, I am not somebody who supports violence, thuggery, looting, thieving, vandalism. I don't support those things. And that's what you're hearing a lot now, that word, but. And that's very interesting. I can understand people's frustrations and tensions that there's community tensions, and I personally think we're seeing now possibly the start of something that may get worse and may become a more regular occurrence, unfortunately. Look, it's a difficult situation. I understand that tensions are high right now, and some people are trigger happy kind of thing, and some people are jumping on the bandwagon and of protesting when really they're just there to cause trouble. But that also applies to the other side as well, to the left wingers. And the extreme left. see, I believe that in England we do have an extreme far left, basically establishment, really. Media, the government, authorities, police, the civil service, etc., the judicial system. It's all pretty much left leaning, really. And I think people have just got tired of. I think people have got tired of the labels, the smearing, the slandering. People have got tired of watching their country become infested with people that have nothing in common with them. They don't look like them, they don't sound like them, they wouldn't be able to hold down a conversation if they tried. Most of them don't speak English. Most of these people crossing the boat, coming across the channel on the boats, we don't know who they are. Most of them, if any of them, to be honest, because a lot of them are undocumented. So we don't know who they are, where they've come from exactly, why they've come across. I just don't buy this whole thing of that. All of these people are refugees or whatever. Some maybe possibly, but I think a lot of them are just opportunistic. Illegal immigrants, in my opinion, and the reason for that is because in the UK they can make a lot more money than they can back in their own countries, because a lot of them are unskilled, uneducated, and I'll get onto my own people in a moment. And I just think that people have got tired of seeing their communities change. Just things just getting worse and worse, and ever since, I think there's a number of things that have happened over the years. The increasing amounts of terrorism and stabbings, and lawlessness, and a two-tier system, which it really genuinely is that, because we're seeing it playing out, and we've seen it playing out for years. Too many lenient sentences, appeasing to minority groups, excessive amounts of cowing down, and too many people towing the line and pretending that there isn't an issue with sections of the Islamic community in the UK. And I think, as well as that, just the standard of living's gone down, social degradation, complete distrust, dislike, disrespect of the police, authorities, government, just authority overall. The cost of living's probably not helped. COVID was probably a big contributing factor as well. So I think, to be honest, underneath the surface, kind of people were looking for something. I think a lot of people. I don't think you're using it as an excuse, but I think what's happened with the stabbing of those three unfortunate girls the other week, it was the final straw kind of thing. I think that's my take on it. Yes, there are people involved in this, and of course with the protest that happened with the United Kingdom event that happened in London. Some people on the left might say that that kind of was lit the fire, perhaps, to some extent, and I just don't buy it really. I think the vast majority of people that attend these events aren't actually there to cause any kind of trouble. They're just there because that's the only real opportunity that they've got where they can express themselves and show that it's their country. Because I think for far too long in the UK, everything's been about everybody else but the white working class, basically. And another factor, I think, is this massive divide between and a real genuine hatred, I think, between the middle classes and the working classes, and vice versa. Because I think really it's predominantly a middle class movement, essentially, that led to what became woke, and that certainly hasn't done anybody any favors, I don't think. So I think there's that. We've got to consider that as well. So overall, I think there's been a lot of things that have finally got to people, and the stabbing, as I've mentioned twice now. I just think that was. I think riots were coming anyway. I think disorder was going to come eventually. I was kind of getting that impression and feeling anyway that it was going to come sooner or later. I thought it would happen years ago, actually, to be honest. But it's. I mean, we had the riots in 2011, but that wasn't really the same thing. I think that was just more of a reaction to the. I think the coalition at the time and the austerity and things. But again, it's difficult because, like I said, I do understand people's need to vent and to let out their pressure, as it were. I think really, to be honest, I think England has been a pressure cooker for a good few decades now, because you've just had so many tensions, so many different communities that I think just people have felt that like foreigners and aliens in their own country really for a long time, and I think this is, clearly I don't agree with. I certainly don't agree with people vandalising people's shops and livelihoods, because that's wrong. Throwing bottles and things like that at the police, it's that's one thing. I certainly don't condone it, but that's one thing. But then trashing people's, by that I mean like people in riot gear and things. There's no need for. Ultimately, I would prefer if nobody was out there causing trouble and violence. Okay. But we are where we are, and the problems things aren't getting better in that country. And on top of everything I've just said, you've had Starmer in the last few days ago now, coming out and basically declaring war on the working classes. I mean, has he got any brain cells at all, this guy? I mean, did he really think that was going to go down well with people? I mean, it wasn't the smart. It certainly wasn't the smartest thing he could have said, is it? I just think that. I think ultimately, to be honest, I think that between Labour and the Tories, they've essentially brought it on themselves. But again, there are problems within council estates. There are serious issues: a lack of funding, poor educational standards. If you go to a lot of basic, your comprehensive school, crime waves in certain communities because the police aren't doing much anymore because they don't have the staff, the funding. Council cuts. So just austerity combined with more authoritarianism from the government, police, councils, and people, and this sense of double standards in the country. So, when you've got people that have got, that are in relative poverty, let's call it, where there are problems with, let's call it out for what it is, alcoholism, drug problems, drug addictions, a lack of people in work, people watching their communities change, people watching people that have come here illegally get better treatment than they would have done if they went to another country and went there illegally. And just a general sense, I think, from a lot of people that nobody gives a fuck about them anymore. And that's when people get desperate. when people feel that they've got nothing left to lose, I think that's what you're seeing, kind of thing. Because if the government, which it seems to me, at least from Starmer's point of view, basically hates the working classes, which we knew anyway, and we know that the government hates, despises the working classes because they always have done. But they just wanted to use them and manipulate them and saw them as opportunities. Because that's what people always do. That's what people are really like. People try and prey on the most vulnerable, most weakest. And for a lot of people, that is, unfortunately, they fall prey to that because they have been born into places that aren't affluent, that aren't wealthy. And so, you know, you've got all of this bitterness, resentment, jealousy, hatred, not hatred, well, maybe that's a bit of a strong word, but just seething resentment of authority, and certainly distrust and dislike of certain people from other communities. It's not xenophobia, it's just human nature, because people are tribally based, and people want to be around people that they can understand and get along with. And whether you want to admit that or not, well, that's just a fact. That's the reality of human nature. We're social creatures. We like being around people that we have something in common with, or have a lot of things in common with, for the most part. Why do you think so many people from working class communities and middle class even, why do you think they attend things like tennis and football and cricket and things like this? Because there's common ground there. There's a commonality in the culture, that there's something that brings people together. And I think that as well possibly is an aspect to it, certainly in football, where there's been like a decline in the standards of football, where it's become more about identity politics than it has a sport, and so much money's been allowed to corrupt it, and where things have just been closed down left, right and centre, where towns and cities across the UK now are basically just ghost towns. So there's all of that stuff combined. But all Starmer can say is that they're all EDL thugs and far right scum, basically. And this man was supposed to have been a lawyer. It's just shocking. And as we've seen just in the past 24 hours, in my own city, you know, civil unrest, a lot of people just saying, I just think there's a sense of people just don't care anymore. They don't care about their communities because nobody gives a fuck about them. They don't exist, basically, to the establishment. Because the reality is that there are deep-seated resentments and differences between certain sections of the community now, where one basically hates the other and vice versa, and they don't want to address it because they don't want to light that bonfire. That's what it is. That's what this is really. This is about appeasing Muslims and minority groups to stop them from causing mayhem, essentially, by calling anybody that stands up and says anything that doesn't toe the mainstream media, the government line, as vermin. And the reality is, if they could, they'd have everybody locked up or shipped away. And the way things are going, given what Starmer's just said, it's looking very, very, very. I just think he has really now. This could turn into something very, very, very dark soon, because he's openly to the general public declared war on the working class, basically. And what that means is that they're finished. Starmer's finished, basically. He's just signed his party's death warrant. If you think Labour are going to get back in 2029, you've got no chance. It's over. It's done. Finished. No chance. Absolutely no chance. You know, he could have handled this so much better. Do I think that people should be going out there and burning and burning cars and setting fire to things and smashing up shops and just causing mayhem and damage and causing trouble? No. But also, the police are causing problems as well. And just in case you haven't noticed, certain other people are causing problems across the country and have been doing so for many years. And the police don't seem to want to deal with them people. Like the situation in Leeds where they ran away. We don't want to deal with that. We don't want to get involved in those kind of, taboo things and sensitive areas of society. Okay, fine. Don't. Just let it fester. Just let it keep getting worse and worse and worse. Just keep ignoring the problem. Just keep burying your head in the sand, living in denial, and pretend that everything's okay and fine and wonderful. And let's all sing happy ever after under a rainbow flag, and pretend that all Muslims across the UK are all nice and friendly, wonderful people. Yes, there are a lot of people who are decent and nice, but there is a serious problem with the religion itself, and there are sects of that of certain elements of communities and certain parts of Islam itself that need to be talked about, that need to be addressed. In my opinion, we need to really now sit down and have the grown, mature conversations. Because if you think what's happening out there with all these riots and unrest, if you think that's bad now, if things go the way that I think they're going to go, where you're going to see this now basically every other weekend, potentially, or every other week, or something else is going to happen with some illegal immigrants stabbing someone or trying to hack someone to death with knives and axes, like those Muslim gangs that we saw on Twitter overnight, chasing people, and yet the police do nothing. Well, we'll protect you. We'll protect you. We're not going to protect those people, the people that have lived here and their families have got heritage here for the last few hundred years, if not thousands of years. Nah, I'm not going to do that. Why would we do that? We're not going to protect those people. They're all scum. They're all white working class yobs on the dole. And you know what? Yeah, that is to some extent true. Some of those people are yobs. Some of those people are unemployed. And why is that? Why is that? Because society is fucked. That's why. And it has been for the better part of 30 years in that country. Because a lot of industries have moved out the country. Agencies have moved in and made everything corrupted. Wages don't mean shit anymore. Excuse my language, but they don't mean anything anymore, and haven't done for years. And whether you want to admit it or not, for a lot of people, they just don't see the point. What's the point? But because what the real issue is that nobody has any respect for their country anymore, because they feel like they're not appreciated. They don't feel that they've got a voice. They don't feel heard. They don't feel that anyone gives a fuck about them. And you could say, they brought it on themselves by being. But it's that you got to look beyond that. There's serious issues going on that needed to be addressed decades ago, and when, and whose fault is that? It's the fault of governments, successive governments that have allowed Christianity to become obsolete, essentially, pretty much, where the family unit has been destroyed, where marriage no longer means anything anymore, where the police don't respect the community and the community don't respect the police, where people who do things wrong get lenient sentences, where communities are just left to rack and ruin. And the issue is that the police, the authorities, haven't clamped down on things, and so problems have been just allowed to just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And that is the problem. Ultimately, the underlying issue is that councils, the police, the government, they've done nothing. They've done really nothing to solve anything. And yes, you can't control what everybody does, and people do make choices at the end of the day. But it is a symptom of decades of decline in that country. That's what it is. The country's been in decline for about 50 years. And if you think that stripping people of their benefits is going to be a solution to it, or introducing some kind of social credit system is the way forward, then you're going to see triple times what you're seeing at the moment, because people won't stand for it. People won't put up with it. I'm not a I wouldn't say like a pro welfare necessarily, but you can't just let people fall below the poverty line. It's like it's just not acceptable, and if you do, then you'll have even more problems. But you see, what I think is going to happen now is the police and the government, they're going to do whatever they possibly can now to try and be as controversial as they possibly can, as confrontational as they possibly can, and instigate as much trouble as they can. Why? So that they can bring in draconian laws. That's why. Because that's what they want to do. That's what they want. They want to lock everybody up. Meanwhile, anybody who's not white will get away with whatever. Because that's basically what this government wants. They don't want the white working class in that country anymore. They want rid of them. And the Tories and previous governments have wanted to rid of them for decades. They're basically the Jews of the United Kingdom, as it were. Not a very nice comparison analogy, but essentially that's how I see it. And this is just going to keep getting worse. And before long, maybe in a few weeks or a few months from now, if this keeps continuing, the army will be called in. Now, do I want to see an end to this? Of course I do. Do I give a fuck about the police? Not particularly. But do I want to see police get hurt? I don't really care, to be honest. But do I want to see people's innocent individuals and their businesses, their livelihoods get ruined? No, I don't. Not at all. And as well, actually, the thing is, the police, some of the people that are out there trying to protect people and stop these things from escalating probably support some of those people that are rioting. But because they're not allowed to express their views, and rightfully so, they're supposed to be impartial. Some of them are. But then again, I suppose if you support those kind of things, you wouldn't be. You could make the argument of why you're in the job, really. If it's like, I don't know. You're supposed to be there to keep law and order. So I just think it's a complex situation that needs to be properly discussed in depth, and not just throwing things to see what sticks. Just throwing labels left, right, and centre. Making massive generalisations and stereotyping people and discriminating people. This has been coming. This has been in the works for decades. as far as I can tell. And I'm sorry, but the government has brought it on themselves. They have. By not addressing the problems that have been very apparent for many years to many people. You know, we should have sat down right after 7/7, really, and said, right, this is the direction of the country that we're going in now. But of course, at the time, Labour were in power, so they wouldn't have done that. But that's what we should have done. We should have sat down at that point and said, we need to get a grip on what's going on in this country, because the seeds of what's happening now, and what's been happening over the last few years, 10, 15, 10 years. The seeds of the seeds were planted long ago, and I just don't think Starmer really truly understands what's going on. I don't think he truly understands the scale of what he's dealing with here. And if the army get called in, or some serious powers become available to them, legislation-wise or whatever, where basically everyone's under these new censorship laws, which is probably what's going to come in, where people like Danny Tomo, Paul Thorpe, and others, Reverend Simon Sard. I mean, there's hundreds of people on hundreds of channels that are what we call based, centre right, which is what I call it. The real, the honest, direct centre right, rather than the, sort of pseudo middle class types. You see, and I think honestly, I believe that's what's caused all of this. It's the middle class and the pseudo middle class, basically upper working class types that have bought into this whole left wing bullshit that's been going on for decades now. They're to blame. They're the ones that are guilty for this, really, because it's their beliefs that have allowed what's happened to happen, essentially, indirectly, because they've supported governments that have allowed things to be swept under the carpet. We all know what those things are. You just can't have. You cannot have a country where you have a police forces that treat one group of individuals one way and another different. That doesn't work, and it never will, and people won't stand for it. It's sad, it's shocking to see certain people taking things too far when it was things were supposed to just be protests. But I think, as much as I hate to say it, and I really do, maybe this is, to some extent, it pains me to say this, and I don't want to say it, but I think possibly this may be what the country needs, partially, at least temporarily, hopefully anyway, so that the government gets an ass kicking and gets a taste of what could happen, even what could get escalated even further. People getting killed, people getting hurt, council officers getting trashed, more police officers and premises getting trashed, PM at threat, politicians under threat. The thing is, if Brits get killed by the police, and certainly if the army come in and start seriously injuring people or even killing people, God help you, because at that point people will just be like, I wouldn't want to be there. You'll see. There'll be nothing left of the country. It'll be completely destroyed. And at that point, that's when things will change. That's when you'll get people in power that support the people that have felt like outcasts, essentially. Because when you keep demonizing people for decades, even if there are problems, which there are in every community, every part of the world, every country in the world has issues, everybody, this is what happens. I believe that our country is in deep, 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 deep shit right now. And I honestly don't know what Starmer's, I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know how he thinks he's going to possibly... Because this isn't just about now. This is about what happens a year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Because he's not looking at the root causes of this. He's just being reactionary. He's not trying to understand the working class, because he despises them, absolutely despises them, because he sees himself as middle class, and his voter base and those people. So of course he despises them, because that's what the people who vote for him want him to be like. So he's playing a game, and people know it. People know who he is, what he stands for, and what he's trying to do. He's got a plan. He had one from the very beginning, and that's why I was so vague throughout the whole election campaign, because he knew exactly what he wanted to do. And the reason he didn't say it is because nobody would have supported a single fucking part of it. Not a single word of it. The guy's a lying, conniving, manipulative piece of shit. And the sooner he resigns or he gets kicked out of his position, the better. They should all be in jail. Every single last one of those fuckers in that parliament. Everybody, every one of them. Besides maybe a handful of people. You know, we can't allow this to keep on continuing. But we also can't allow the country to just keep going on in the direction it's going in either. We can't allow that either. Sooner or later, people are gonna have to sit down and start admitting and being honest and open and transparent about the state of the country, because it is a fucking cesspit. And I'm sorry that I've sworn so much throughout this video, but I'm angry and pissed off about things right now. I don't want to see my country erupting into riots. Certainly not my city. But I get it. I get it. But that doesn't mean I support it. And just because I share things on Twitter doesn't mean I support it either. It just means this is interesting, I want to share it. Not that I support these people. You know, the idea of these events of the weekend was supposed to be purely protests. And that's how it should have been, and that's what it should be. But I think, you know, the thing is, in England, you're not allowed to actually really be who you are. You're supposed to toe the line, you're supposed to fit in. And if you don't fit in, then you're an outcast in that country. And that's why so many people fuck off and go elsewhere. That's why so many Brits leave and go elsewhere. because this is it's too restrictive, far too restrictive, far too ignorant, in not so much that it's just in every aspect, in every class, every aspect. It's just there's a lot of problems, but nowhere's perfect. So, but I think people have just I think just come to the realization that protests aren't going to do anything. That they don't do anything for the most part. They're not going to resolve anything. They're not going to change anything. So to a lot of people, they just say, well, we better up our game then. We better do something else, because clearly doing the same thing over and over and over again is insanity, isn't it? So what do? What else can you do when you come from a deprived area? Let's face it. Let's face facts. A lot of these places that are having problems are deprived areas. And it's not just about that. It's about a whole host of problems. And I think, to some extent, and again, I hate to say it, but I think it's about time, actually, that people rose up. But I don't like people attacking people's shops and cars and things. I think that's wrong, and that those people should be punished for those things. You know, throwing things at riot police, I can understand it to some extent, but trashing people's businesses, as I've said multiple times now throughout this video, that's uncalled for, that's not right, I don't agree with it, I don't support that at all. And I never will. That is thuggery. Just looting just for the sake of it, because you've and this whole thing of people walking around with cans and bottles and things, it's like you're not doing. Even if you are genuinely concerned and want to do something, that is not helping the movement. That's just causing more problems, and all you're doing is feeding into the narrative that the mainstream media and the government wants to put out there and is putting out there. That you're all, EDL aligning folk, basically, and some of them are. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're necessarily bad people per se. They might have done some bad things. We've all done some bad things. Now, we might not have all trashed people's shops and stuff, but none of us are innocent. We've all got skeletons in our closet. So let's not pretend that we're all, holier than thou, or we're all angels, because we aren't. These problems go far, far, far deeper. They're ingrained into all sorts of issues in that country. And until you start talking about these things and addressing them properly, fully, openly, where you allow people to have free speech, regardless of whether you disagree with it, whether you like it or not, this is just going to get worse and worse. And before you know it, the police will be overwhelmed. They won't be able to do anything, and the army will be drawn in, and then there'll be absolute fucking chaos. Absolute chaos in that country. And then you really will see the far right. That's when you'll see the real far right come out. And I don't want to see that. Because everybody can be pushed over the line. Everyone's that much away from snapping. Is that really what you want to see, Steimer, is it? Is that really what you want? Is that what you want your record to be? Even shorter time in office than Liz Truss? Not that much over. The country's divided, it's segregated. There's no sense of real community cohesion anymore, I don't think, in a lot of places. People pretend that they get along and they like each other, but really deep down, people despise most people. Certainly from other communities where people don't talk to each other, people don't engage with each other really. Everyone's just going about their own business. because it's an individual society now. There's no real collective sense of community in that country anymore. Apart from the working class, I think, where I think you're starting to see a community come together. Not on the grounds that I would like them to be coming together in certain ways. Obviously, as I've talked about in this video, but I think if we can just get people to, if we can, the reality. I think the reality is that people are just done. I think people are just done. I think people are just done talking. They're done waiting around, like I said in my previous video. I just think that people, they just don't see any other way now. Is this a sign of things to come? Probably. In fact, I think it's going to ramp up over the next few weeks, months. Just creating some kind of national police force, whatever you want to call it, and using facial recognition technology and drones and whatever, and do you really think people are monks? All they're going to do is wear balaclavas and wear things across the face so you don't know who they are. It's like why even tell people if you're gonna do that? Why tell them? And I think I saw that it's legal anyway. You're not allowed to do that. So, his whole "I'm gonna get tough" kind of, show thing that he's put on. I'm a mature politician. I'm gonna deal with this. I'm gonna deal with these people. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not gonna deal with shit. You're not gonna resolve anything. All you're gonna do is just keep making the problems worse. And before you know it, it'll just the country will be burnt to a crisp, and then we'll have to start all over again. What we need really now, the only solution to this, as far as I can tell, is to get rid of this government as quickly as we possibly can at whenever the next election is. I suspect it's going to be a lot sooner than 2029. We need to get rid of this government. We really, as much as I don't like to say it, we need a hardline government in power. We need people to start getting fucking real, getting serious about things. Like, really serious. Get rid of all these illegal people that are in the country. Get rid of them. Every one of them. Every single last one of them needs to be gone. Got rid of. And then we need to start working on ways of getting other people out of the country. Or criminals. Anybody, really, that breaks the law, doesn't like the country, or has got affiliations to terrorism or anybody like that, they should be gone. We need repatriation. We need now to start having referendums and movements and working towards getting rid of a lot of people in the country who don't want to be there, who don't like being there. We need to get rid of them. We need to get back to a sense of who we are, an identity, because that's what this is really, I think, all been really essentially about. It's an identity crisis. It's essentially civil war, really, in a way, to some extent. And if the army get called, then it really will be a civil war. We've got to start getting tough on sentencing. I think people like Farage and others have said, we've got to start dealing with knife crime and stuff. That's true. I just think we've got to start being incredibly strict. Banning certain people from the country. Massively reducing how many people can get visas and can stay in the country legally. So And we've got to start bringing a sense of community back. But you've also got to start getting respect back for the police and authority, and then you wouldn't see these things happening, or not as much, or not to the extent. Then there'd be no need for people like Tommy Robinson and people like that. There'd be no need for them. Because even they don't really want to be involved in this, because they're putting their life on the line, and other than anybody else that's in part of that movement. They don't really want to be involved in it. They'd rather just have their own little private, quiet lives. But at some point, somebody had to stand up and expose what's going on and what's gone wrong in the country. And we get it. It's, there's this sense that it should only be the middle classes that are allowed to do things like that. And this whole rhetoric of people being, normal folk, the average normal person, like that, like as if that's supposed to be, helpful in any way. Talk TV. Just belittling people, putting people in little boxes, and diminishing people's self-esteem even further. I kind of knew these problems were coming years ago. I knew there was going to be something that would come eventually, because it's just been getting worse for the past, certainly as long as I've well, it wasn't so bad in certain ways. There were certainly antisocial behaviour when I was a child, when I was a teenager, but nothing like we're seeing right now. You certainly didn't hear as many stabbings from illegal immigrants and migrants, or whatever I'm calling, and issues with Islam and stuff. Like, it wasn't like, for this 9/11 things, but you certainly didn't. It wasn't a regular occurrence like it is now. Where is this going to end? Like, how is it going to end? What is the actual solution? There has to be something. But you continue, Starmer, and the government, Labour government, the way you are, and you'll have a problem on your hands that you won't be able to control, and probably the army won't be able to control either. And you'll have brought it all on yourselves. So, to finish, I'm shocked to some extent, but I'm not surprised. I'm disgusted, but part of me, honestly, is kind of like, I don't even really care that much anymore what they do, because they haven't been listened to. Protests don't resolve anything, don't change anything. Government's corrupt, police is corrupt, authorities are corrupt. Maybe you deserve it. I just wish that innocent people weren't getting dragged into it. And I wish the movement hadn't kind of been infiltrated by the worst of but it happens in any group. You're always going to get people on the fringes that want to be deliberately troublesome. I don't have the solutions. I don't know what the solutions are. I have thoughts and ideas, but I'm never going to be in a position of authority and power to change anything or influence change. But at some point, someone's going to have to stand up and have the conversations like I keep talking about that have been needed for the past 20 years. What are we going to do to resolve these problems? Are we going to resolve them or not? Because if we're not, then you can expect more of what's been going on these past few days. Much, much, much worse than this. Is that what you want? If you do, carry on as you are. If you don't, grow a pair of balls. Starmer. And I suggest you do it very fucking quickly. It's a shame, it's disappointing. But do you know what? To some extent, and I mean it, to some extent, it is justified, whether you like it or not. But this can't go on. This cannot go on, because people are going to get seriously hurt, and people are going to get killed. There's a lot of people in that country that I wouldn't like to be around or to have a conversation with, and I wouldn't get along with, and I wouldn't agree with on pretty much anything. But you know what? I wouldn't wish anything bad on their lives, because I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a warmongering, like, deep-seated hateful person at all. But people are pressure cookers, and we need to realise that. We need to remember it. Especially people who feel like they haven't had a voice, that no one cares about them or their communities or their cities or towns, where they feel that they've become prey, victims of certain circumstances, not brought on by themselves necessarily, where everybody else seems to be against them because they just happen to not speak like them, look like them, dress like them. That's part of the problem in the country as well, this classism bullshit. We're better than you mentality, or this I'm alright Jack mentality. That's another problem. You wanna stop all this nonsense? Then bring people together, create a sense of community, create a sense of collective culture and society. Got to stop all this segregation, people living in their own tiny little communities and pretending that having a little Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran or whatever, or a little Africa, or trying to be gangsters in London or whatever the case may be, in little Islamic communities, separated and controlled by the police and protected by the police because of fear of repercussions and consequences, but don't do anything when they commit crime. Yeah, that's going to end well, isn't it? That's going to end really well. Like I said before, we are in deep, seriously deep trouble right now. I don't think I've ever been so worried about my country as and there are certain things I don't like about my country, hence why I moved to the other side of the world, but it's still my country, and I don't want to see it get thrown in a fucking dustbin because of a small group of people, or because of a government that thinks it's more morally righteous and the middle class, I think they're better than everybody else. And they've got some God-given right to destroy everybody else's lives because they're not like them. But that also applies to the other side as well. Got to find a way of bringing people together, or the country's finished, it's done, it's over.